At ADAPT Community Network, we are here for you. ADAPT believes that individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and the families that advocate for them deserve support. Project Connect is your information and referral resource offering assistance and support to accessing services at ADAPT Community Network, from day habilitation programs, healthcare services, and school-age programs to housing assistance and more. Our experts also provide information and referral services to agencies and organizations outside of ADAPT that serve individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities throughout the 5 boroughs. If you have questions, we have answers. Call us Monday through Friday at 877-827-2666 or email us at projectconnect@adaptcommunitynetwork.org and let us connect you with the services you need.
Hello, and welcome to ADAPT Community Network's 2021 Virtual Family Connect Summit. We are so pleased you can join us. This is the plenary session with ADAPT Community Network CEO Ed Matthews and U.S. Senator Kristen Gillibrand. My name is Laura Hickman, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Fund Development and Marketing here at ADAPT. ADAPT Community Network is a nonprofit provider of an array of services for children, teens, and adults with intellectual or developmental disabilities who live across the 5 boroughs of New York City. To learn more about our range of services, please call Project Connect, our information and referral line, at 1-877-827-2666. During this session, you'll hear a discussion between Mr. Matthews and Senator Gillibrand around programs and policies addressing the needs of people with disabilities. After the session, we encourage you to submit any questions by emailing them to projectconnect@adaptcommunitynetwork.org. At this time, I'm pleased to introduce you to the CEO of ADAPT Community Network, Edward R. Matthews. Ed Matthews has worked in the developmental disabilities field since 1974, serving as CEO of ADAPT Community Network, formerly known as UCP of NYC, since 1989. In his capacity as CEO, Mr. Matthews oversees 2,500 employees across New York City. Mr. Matthews holds undergraduate and graduate degrees in psychology from Fordham University and St. John's University, respectively. He has served as chairman of the Public Education Committee of the United Cerebral Palsy Associations in Washington, D.C. He is also the past president of the Interagency Council in New York City. In February of 2011, Mr. Matthews was selected by the governor to be a member of the Medicaid redesign team. In addition, he was appointed by the OPWDD Commissioner Courtney Burke to serve on the steering committee to implement the People First Waiver, a partnership between New York State and the federal government to reconstruct the Medicaid funding system. He currently serves on an OPWDD Care Coordination Work Group and was the first chair of the Board of Managers of Care Design New York. He sits on the Board of Partnerships for Healthcare Solutions, which is responsible for Partners Health Plans, the only managed care demonstration project in the U.S. devoted entirely to individuals with disabilities. In 2020, Matthews was honored as an essential change agent by the National Historic Recognition Project, which recognizes the key people who have transformed the field of intellectual and developmental disabilities within the United States over the past 20 years. In July of 2021, Mr. Matthews was selected by Cranes New York for their Notable in Healthcare list. Thank you for joining us and welcome to today's session.
I'm Ed Matthews, the CEO of ADAPT Community Network, and we are privileged this morning to be joined by Senator Kristen Gillibrand of New York. Senator Gillibrand has been a leader in some of the toughest fights in Washington. She won a long fight to provide permanent health care and compensation to the 9/11 first responders and community survivors who are sick with diseases caused by the toxins at Ground Zero. Senator Gillibrand has led the effort to repeal the don't ask, don't tell policy that banned gay people from serving openly in the military. And she wrote the Stock Act, which made it illegal for members of Congress to trade stocks on insider information. As the mother of 2 school-age sons, Senator Gillibrand understands the challenges that working families face. She is working to rewrite the rules of the workplace so it can keep up with our changing workforce by creating more well-paying jobs, increasing access to education, and training, and building a universal paid leave program. Born and raised in upstate New York, Senator Gillibrand's home is in Albany with her husband, Jonathan, and their two sons, Theo and Henry. Senator Gillibrand was first appointed to the Senate to fill the expired term of Senator Hillary Clinton, who then moved on to be Secretary of State and has twice now been re-elected to the Senate. We welcome you and we're very privileged to have you here this morning, Senator Gillibrand. We know you're pressed for time, so we will get right to some questions. You certainly are a champion of the underdog in many cases, and I know that education is a prominent part of your work in the Senate. And special education funding, as you know, both here in New York and throughout the country, has taken a real pounding over the past several years, especially during the pandemic. We want to be able to make sure that especially those early childhood and school age programs are getting the appropriate clinical and technology services and special education services for children. What can you in the Senate do to help ensure that those kids are getting everything they need? And what can the Senate do to help get those kids get everything they need?
Well, thank you for that question. And thank you for making this opportunity available. One of the bills that I've been championing is called the Keep Our Promise to America's Children and Teachers Act, the PACT Act. That legislation is bicameral, both House and Senate. It supports educational programs for low-income students and students with disabilities. The bill puts Congress on a fiscally responsible path to provide mandatory funding for Title I and the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. School closures, remote learning during this pandemic have already impeded educational progress for millions of students, especially those who have needed additional support. So now more than ever, lower income students and students with disabilities are at risk of falling even further behind as this pandemic has drained the resources for cash-strapped schools and districts and reduced access to valuable education support programs. This bill, the Keep Our PACT Act, would mandate funding of key programs that support students in lower income school districts and students with disabilities. It reduces the inequities in the education system, and it ensures that all students receive quality education. I'm also proud to fight for funding for Individuals with Disabilities Education Act each year. State and school districts are federal IDA funding to support a number of critical activities such as developing individualized learning plans, developing instruction for students with disabilities, and supporting successful educational outcomes for each student. And as you know, Congress committed to providing federal funding to support at least 40% of the excess cost of educating students with disabilities at the time of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act passage into law in 1975. Yet we've annually seen the federal government fall short of meeting that basic level of support. And in recent years, the federal government commitment has remained flat at approximately 15%. So that's approximately 7 million children with disabilities who are being educated in our nation's public schools that deserve much stronger support. So I've also championed funding requests with Senator Duckworth and other Senate colleagues to support the state and territorial councils on development disabilities, to support the University Centers for Excellence in Development Disabilities and the Protection and Advocacy for Individuals with Development Disabilities program, as well as the Development Disabilities Projects of National Significance. Funding these important education programs for people with disabilities have not kept pace with inflation or need. These programs, authorized under the Development Disabilities Assistance and Bill of Rights Act of 2000, are experiencing increased demand for their services from persons with developmental disabilities. With the labor force participation rate of individuals with developmental disabilities at approximately 1/3 of that of the general population, it's critical that these programs also receive robust and more support. So I'm committed to fighting for funding for each of these programs that I've mentioned and to make sure that they can continue to promote equality of opportunity, promote inclusion of persons with disabilities across their lifespan in all aspects of community life.
Well, Senator, that's terrific. And thank you very much. And anything that we can do to help support that effort with our own advocacy out here and with the 500 people who are attending this conference advocacy out here, we will be glad to do, because I know that this is foremost on the mind of most of our parents out there. So we thank you for your advocacy on this, your legislative work on this, And we wish you continued success in trying to help all these kids who have, as we both pointed out, have been underserved for the past decade or so, or even more. A little bit switching to some of our adult programs and services. As you know, over the past several years, and certainly past 10 years, some of the services that our folks, our adult folks with disabilities have really faced decreased funding, both from the state and the federal government, well, the state particularly and federal government over the past several years. The past administration was not, healthcare and long-term care was not high on the agenda, but Governor Hochul has made it clear that she is four square to be able to help as many New Yorkers as she can. And I know that you and Senator Schumer have a very good relationship with Governor Hochul, and we hope that the three of you work together to do many good things. But one of the things we wanted to talk about today is that the Build Back Better agenda that President Biden has put forth and is currently under a fair amount of scrutiny in both houses of in Washington. The original proposal in there was for $400 billion for additional services and housing services for folks with developmental disabilities throughout the country. And that's sort of been kicked around a bit in terms of the dollar amounts and so forth. But certainly, as you know, and have been heard from many, many people over the past several years, that the recruitment and retention of direct support professionals who rely on the services has been an enormous problem now and continues to be a problem both pre, during, and post pandemic. What can you do to sit in the Senate to support some funding, and what can we do to assist you in this effort?
Oh, another great question. Thank you. So I've been a champion of the Better Care, Better Jobs Act since its original introduction. Now, this is legislation that would expand home and community-based services infrastructure in the America's Jobs Plan. In order to ensure that this funding is included in the upcoming legislative packages, I sent a letter with my Senate colleagues in August requesting that the forthcoming reconciliation package include the Better Care, Better Jobs Act for Congress to provide $400 billion over 10 years to expand Medicaid home and community-based services, and to have been fighting for it to be included. In terms of what you can do, you're doing it right now, raising your voices and urging Congress to act on the Better Care, Better Jobs Act is the best way to help this pass. When I hear directly from New Yorkers during events like this, it energizes me to fight even harder for what you need, like the Better Care, Better Jobs Act, which I champion. So you can count on me to keep raising these issues with my Senate colleagues and to push for its final inclusion into one of the upcoming pieces of legislation.
Well, Senator Gillibrand, we thank you for your time this morning. And I know you're pressed for time and we won't be able to take any of the questions, but as the day moves on and people have questions for you, we'll be glad those we can't answer to forward directly to your office and any comments and so forth. And again, thank you so much for your advocacy. Thank you so much. By the way, Senator has never missed a session or a vote in the Senate since she's been there. So I can't imagine any of the other 99 can say anything like that. So we appreciate the diligence with which you do the job, the care for which you care for your fellow New Yorkers, and we support everything you're doing. And we thank you for your time this morning. It's been our privilege to have you.
Thank you, Edward. I appreciate you very much.